Have you ever felt like you're just wrestling with problems that nobody else could possibly understand? Well, it turns out people were asking the exact same questions about life 2,500 years ago. Today, we're going to dive into some really fascinating conversations between the Buddha and various community leaders. They were called Gāmaṇis, who brought him the absolute biggest challenges of their lives.
You know the questions. Why do I get so angry all the time? How do I stop worrying about everything? What are the real consequences of the things I do? Seriously, if you've ever felt overwhelmed by stress or anger or just plain confusion about it all, you are in the right place. We're about to unpack some ancient wisdom that feels like it was written for us, right here, right now.
All right, let's get into it. First up, ancient questions, modern problems. We're going to see that while our phones and our jobs have changed, the fundamental stuff that keeps us up at night, that has not changed one bit.
And look, we're not talking about some abstract philosophical debates here. We're talking about a professional soldier, a super popular actor, a dad who was just consumed by anxiety for his son. These were real people, and they all came to the Buddha with these raw, totally relatable problems. Their questions really show just how timeless the search for a meaningful, less painful life truly is.
So what kind of answers did they get? Well, probably not the simple life hacks you might expect. Next up, we're going to see how the Buddha just completely challenged some very common, and let's be honest, very comforting ideas about how the world works.
Okay, so take the story of this guy, Tulaputta. He was a famous actor, a headman of his troupe, and he came to the Buddha with this belief that had been passed down for generations. He said, look, I make people laugh, I make them feel good on stage, so surely I'm going to be reborn in a heaven of laughter. I mean, that seems logical, doesn't it?
But the Buddha's response was, wow, it was stunning. He basically explained that if a performance stirs up the audience's greed, their anger, or their confusion, even if they're laughing their heads off, the actor is actually making those negative states stronger. It's the intention behind it and the effect on the mind that really matters, not just the surface-level entertainment.
And this brings us to another headman, a professional soldier named Yoda Jiva. He had a similar kind of belief, one that's pretty common in a lot of cultures, that a soldier who dies bravely in the line of duty is automatically guaranteed a heroic rebirth. It's a really comforting thought for sure, but is it true?
And again, the Buddha just cuts right through the conventional wisdom. He points out that to fight in a battle, your mind has to be set on a very specific goal. May these beings be struck down, may they be destroyed, may they be annihilated. It is that very intention, that mindset of ill will, that shapes your destiny, not your job title, not the uniform you wear.
This all leads to a really crucial point. Our actions have natural consequences. In the Pali language, this concept is called karma. And to explain it, the Buddha used this brilliant analogy. Imagine you toss a heavy rock into a lake. No matter how many people gather around and pray, float, stone, float, it's going to sink. That's its nature. Now imagine you pour oil on the water. No matter how many people pray, sink, oil, sink, it's going to float. That's its nature. Our actions are exactly the same. The results are baked right in, and no amount of wishful thinking can change that basic reality.
So if our jobs don't define us and wishful thinking doesn't work, what is the actual cause of all our struggles? Let's get to the very heart of the Buddha's diagnosis.
According to the Buddha, the ultimate source of our unhappiness isn't what happens to us, but how our minds react to it. He said the root of the entire problem lies in three toxic mind states, often called the three poisons. First, you've got raga. That's the fire of greed, of passion, of constantly wanting more. Second is dosa. That's the feeling of aversion, of anger, of trying to push things away. And finally, there's moho, which is this fundamental confusion or ignorance about how things really are. These three, he says, are the true roots of all our struggles.
In fact, he drills down even further to one super specific term, chandraraga. It's a Pali word for that intense desire and passion we feel. You know, the wanting and the attachment we have for people, for things, for certain outcomes. And he says this one thing is the direct cause of all our emotional pain, all our sorrow, grief, and despair. That is a bold claim. Let's see how he backs it up.
So a headman named Bhadraka comes to the Buddha and admits he's constantly anxious about his beloved son, Chiravasti. He says every morning he sends a messenger just to check if his son is okay, and he's literally sick with worry until the messenger gets back. The Buddha asks him a really simple question. Does the thought of something bad happening to other people in the village cause you this much pain? And the headman says, well, no. And right there, the Buddha points out the crucial link. It is your chandarago, he says, your desire and passion for your son, that is the root of this suffering.
The attachment itself is what creates the vulnerability to pain.
Now, I know that might sound a little bleak, but think about it. It's actually incredibly empowering. Because if our own minds are the source of the problem, then they are also the source of the solution. So what's the path forward? Let's explore the practical steps the Buddha offered.
See, the Buddha doesn't advocate for a life of cold detachment or, harsh self-punishment. In fact, he specifically warns against both of those things. He calls his path the middle way. It's a way of life that skillfully navigates between the extreme of just chasing every single pleasure and the other extreme of pointless self-denial. It's not about giving up, and it's definitely not about punishing yourself. It's a path of balance, of wisdom, and of seeing things clearly. And this is one of the most hopeful messages in all of these teachings. Yes, our past actions have consequences. That stone is still at the bottom of the lake. We can't undo them. But, and this is a huge but, we are not doomed by them. Our future is not set in stone.
And he gives this absolutely brilliant illustration of how. He uses the analogy of a conch shell player. A weak little puff on the shell might not be heard, but a powerful blast can be heard across the entire region. He says that when we cultivate a mind that is vast, immeasurable, a mind filled with loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity, that positive state is like the powerful blast. It is so strong that it can overwhelm and reshape the results of smaller negative actions from the past. So the key takeaway here is that your present state of mind has immense power. What we choose to do now truly matters most.
So, how do we put all of this together in our day-to-day lives? For this, the Buddha offers one final, beautiful metaphor that just makes it all so practical. He told one of the headmen to think of his life, his mind, his potential in the same way a farmer thinks about his land. You are the farmer of your own existence. A smart farmer knows their land. They know some fields are excellent, some are just average, and some are, well, rocky and barren. Life is exactly like that. We all have advantages and disadvantages, some fertile ground and some really difficult patches. But a wise farmer doesn't waste their best seeds on the worst soil. No way. They choose to plant them in the most fertile ground they have to make sure they get the best possible harvest. And here it is, the crucial point. Your seeds are your choices in this very moment. Where you place your attention, the quality of your intention, the nature of your actions, these are the seeds you are planting for your future, right now. The insight is so simple, but it's incredibly profound. You are not a passive victim of your life circumstances. You are the active farmer of your own mind.
And in the end, the Buddha doesn't give a final answer. He gives you the field, he gives you the seeds, and he gives you the farming manual. The final question, the one that echoes from these ancient conversations right into our modern lives, is left for each and every one of us to answer for ourselves. What will you choose to grow?